Hi, everyone. I am Gwendolyn Bork, the president of Focus for our community unity and support. We are the local addiction prevention coalition out of Lancaster and Depew, New York. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue our series on Gwendolyn Bork. We're going to continue our series on Addiction Prevention 101. So I'm going to show you my screen. Okay, here we go. So we started this in June. It's going to happen we do a live version at our live meetings on a monthly basis. Our monthly coalition meeting is always on the second Tuesday of every month. It's 4 to 5 p.m. It's open to all community members and partners. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, that's where you'll see the location, any other type of agendas, things like that. And if you go to forourcommunitytoday.org, contact us, you'll be able to hit that subscribe button. Afterwards, we'll post the video on the last Friday of the month at 12 p.m. on our Focus YouTube channel. And this is the abbreviated version of what we learned in our physical space from our partners from the Western New York Prevention Resource Center. So this month we were focusing on assessment. All right. So it's about identifying and prioritizing substance misuse problems present in the community and possibly the specific factors that contribute to these problems. So assessment, if we just want to look at that. If you were to go to actually, even on our website is a way to do this. You can get to this very same page, and this little 36-page document is what I review constantly. But if you go to our prevention science page, and then you hit prevention science, and then you click on this graphic right here, but that focuses on the 7 environmental strategies that we use, it takes you exactly to this page. So just a heads up, it's a great way to continuously learn even at a deeper level of what we're talking about. But today we want to talk about assessment, right? So I'm going to share my screen. This document actually comes from CADCA, and they are one of the federal partners, and they train us. So this CADCA, Coalition Anti-Drug Community or Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America National Coalition Institute. So this is who created this document. That is who certified us. We went through, John Brusso and I as the program director and myself as the president, we went through the training and graduated last year. Or no, I think it was actually the spring. It was February of 2021 from the National Coalition Institute, and we were educated on this entire process. It took weeks and weeks and weeks, many, many hours, and it gives us credited hours towards our certified prevention specialist credential. But anyway, so these are the things that we follow. We've been talking about this, the strategic prevention framework, talking about anything from assessment, capacity, planning, evaluation, sustainability, and cultural competence. The strategic prevention framework, as you can see, some people call it the SPIF, for short, SPF. But that's what we're referring to. They also call it the SPIF flower. So if you're ever at meetings and people are abbreviating, that's what all that is. But this is what we've really been focusing on over the past couple of months, and we will until June, and then we'll start all back over again in September. But assessment is a key component of really the beginning parts of this particular process. We've talked about some of the other pieces so far, just so you can understand the wide scope of things. But assessment is where you collect data to define problems, resources, and readiness within a geographic area to address needs and gaps. So when we talk about assessment, it could be qualitative, quantitative. Took me a little bit too to understand even those particular processes, but data in itself, you have to assess like what is going on. And there was a nice little spot up here that I wanted to show you. Your quantitative data is something that, so when you're assessing your community, you're trying to figure out what's going on, you have to collect data, right? And when we did that, I'm going to do a new share here. We did that in 2018, 2019, called the Prevention Needs Assessment. So if you go to back to our website, the Prevention Science tab, and you go to research, here it is, the Prevention Needs Assessment. This is a federally approved survey. We did this in the 2018-2019 school year. We surveyed all the 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students in Lancaster and Depew, and we need to figure out, okay, what, based on these, there's very specific core measures, but based on these core measures that are approved by the federal government, what exactly is going on with our youth, and what drugs, what influences them, what's going on, right? So it has a and this is the best way to describe it. It was designed to assess students' involvement in a specific set of problem behaviors, as well as their exposure to a set of scientifically validated risk and protective factors. The risk and protective factors have been shown to influence the likelihood of academic success, school dropout rate, substance abuse, violence, and delinquency among our youth. So it is this is the data that we collect is, in essence, community information, which is why we always, after the data has been evaluated and it has been reported and analyzed by another federally approved analyst that we have to use as part of our federal grant, they always present this information, and we do this at our town halls. So we've been doing town halls, for the past couple of years since, I became president, and we always speak scientific, evidence-based data that has been collected. So these prevention needs assessment, we did this in 2018, is right here. You go to our website, you can look, it's 35 pages long. And it's got all the breakdown, talks about all the different contents from, the risk and protective factor model of substance abuse prevention, strategic framework, validity measures, how to read the charts, tools for assessment planning, antisocial behavior charts, risk and protective factor charts, all these things, right? So if you ever really want to dig into what we have to evaluate on a constant basis, we're looking at all these things. And it's everything from, these risk and protective factors have to do with community, family, school, peer, you name it. That's what we're looking at, right? And, when they looked at this, and this was put together for us, it talks about, our readiness also to be able to address these problems. So we took the survey by the amazing partnerships with Lancaster and Depew schools. They conducted the digital survey. It was analyzed, it was evaluated, and based on that data, we realized that actually marijuana and alcohol was the top most used drug or substance in our community. So now we based all of our logic models, these very in-depth models, that tells you what you have to define the problem, you have to define the condition of the problem, then potential factors of the problem, then you have to create things, and the data has to back up each one of those, and then you have to go and then create an actual strategic prevention framework. You have to go into the planning process and create all of the action steps that it takes to be able to have community level change over time. So although our models do work on the individual in the process, the objective is a community level, a population level change over time. So we did that. We constructed our models based off of that. And then as every year when we go forward and I have to write another action plan, another year action plan with defined timelines and action items to base those timelines, I have to create new logic models for each substance, marijuana and alcohol, knowing that legislation, potential legalization of recreational marijuana or non-medical marijuana was potentially going to happen. We had already had a plan to attack that potential legislation in a way of education and creating protective factors in order to protect our kids. So We did that then, we're doing it again. Our students are going through the process right now. Our 8th, 10th, 12th graders, both school districts, and it'll be very interesting of what happens when we actually collect that data, right? But back to, let's make sure that we're on here, back to the actual process, right? So we know that's called quantitative, think quantity. That's a lot of students that took those, hundreds of kids. So when we involved the students in last year, full out COVID process, we got students involved to help us really understand their environment, and that was called qualitative data. We had the big picture, but what specifically is happening within our community so we can understand exactly where we need to go. And that's called qualitative. Qualitative data is very specific. You are getting down to the nitty gritty to qualify what the bigger picture looks like. And we involved our students in both Lancaster and Depew. We involved the parents in both school districts, and we created key informant interviews. We created focus groups, and again, worked with our federally approved evaluators, got a PhD in all this type of science to create the questions, create the follow-up questions, make sure nothing was misleading so we could decipher the themes that were happening. And through that qualitative data, we are still using that to this very day as we're approaching our education within our community, because we know now, okay, kids were basically even getting medical marijuana, and they were selling medical marijuana on Instagram and, Snapchat to their friends at school. They, parents have, because of this theme of, this legalization of it on a non-medical basis, it's not a big deal. The more that it's become not a big deal, that theme and that attitude, that perception actually creates more use. So if it's not a big deal, it's legal, it's medically used, we're just going to use more of it. So it'll be very interesting what we see going into this next set of data. And like I said, so if you go here and you start looking at like assessment, and you really want to look at what this looks like, it's everything from, assessing your environment, we have to know how many youth in our community, what are the races of our community, how many, 2-parent households are there, what is the education level of our households, how many parks do we have, where is Lancaster and Depew located. So when we had to write this grant, we had to know, okay, is it near, is it near any major highways? So one of the big things that happens is like Erie County, they actually get a lot of money from the federal government through this HIDA grant. It's high intensity drug trafficking areas. So we know Buffalo, New York, and Erie and the surrounding counties of Buffalo. So Western New York is a high intensity drug trafficking area. We have Canada right above us. We have New York City below us, and we have the lake next to us. We have the rivers. So we are in a traffic zone, drug trafficking zone. So because of that, the feds know that, and the county actually gets money. So, our Erie County Department of Health, they got multi-million-dollar grant, because of that. And I work with the federal government and DEA because of that. So that's one specific thing, just geographically based on where we're at. So that's a geographical assessment, understanding where your community is. Is it rural? Is it suburban? The people that are within it. We have very different socioeconomic levels within even Lancaster and Depew. You have a very impoverished area in Main Street of Depew, and then you have some really nice levels of Depew that are right on the border of Lancaster, where you have 2-family homes, highly educated individuals making over 6 figures. That's a 2 totally different needs too that we have to be able to approach. What I mentioned before is that we involved youth in the assessment. We brought them together. It says, teaching them to be good data detectives. That's one thing that why we need youth at the table. Who do we need around the table? We need youth, right? They're directly affected by the problem. They care, or they know, or they care about someone who's involved and want to solve the problems. They benefit from the problems being solved, and they can actually help us resolve the problem. So having those focus groups, having them take surveys, having them, ask kids and be little detectives within their schools helps us assess the problem even better. So every student that worked with us last year and did those focus groups and did those key informant interviews via Zoom, we all, we understood the time that it took for them to do it, and we awarded them with that time. Amazon cards, Chick-fil-A cards, like whatever we could do to show our appreciation of, hey, thank you so much for working on this problem with us, because we need you, right? It's the context in which a young person lives certainly influences his or her behavior, on how the context becomes an influence is different than that of an adult. With adult support and guidance, youth have the skills and ability to go out into the community and collect information. And their knowledge of technology can be invaluable, and it's true. So getting the youth involved, these people, knowing all this stuff, us working with them working with us, and assessing, taking our data, mobilizing groups to, after things have been strategized, to then qualify it and define it even more and more and more. That's where we're at. So it'll be very interesting this is the planning process, because after assessment, boom, you go into the planning process, and that's where things get to work, right? So what you need to know, okay, is that what you need to know is that we are working constantly on evidence-based, data-driven strategies, and it takes everybody involved. So it'll be interesting, as I mentioned, to see what happens this year as we take the data from this year and missed COVID again, still in the COVID pandemic, and evaluate that with the last 2018 to 2019 survey. You don't want to do it every year. You want to do it every 2 years. There's a reason for that. 8th, 10th, and 12th are transitional years that the feds have also, we've seen you get a more solid set of data points. So we're going to see. My hope is, and we have goals every single year, and our goal was to reduce marijuana and alcohol use by 2%. Is that possible when we know where things went and where kids went when COVID happened, and they were self-isolating, and they weren't able to, engage in these protective factors like school? School is such a protective factor. So we're going to see where the data ends up. We're going to see, if our strategies in the midst of trying to get ahead of legislation and preparing for these type of educational campaigns in advance, providing the resources, throughout COVID, to make sure that, the parents and our youth knew how to cope, who they could talk to, the signs of mental health, the signs of depression, engaging in the resources and within the school, within their community, to stay on target, to stay in good spirits, and the parents having also that support. We'll see where everything plans out. Hopefully it didn't go up. I would be happy with it staying the same, because nationally we've seen some very hard numbers on account of COVID and the effect of our youth. So again, always appreciate the time that I have with all of you. And it's another moment in time where we commemorate the education that both John Bruce and I received in the field of addiction prevention science assessment. I showed you the tools. That's the goal. These tools will always be available to you. If you ever want to get involved, this is where you'll find us. You can find us at forourcommunitytoday.org. I'll show you our website one more time. And here it is, forourcommunitytoday.org. All right. We always need help. We're always looking for, warriors out there in this field as we continue to work hard for our kids. So we'll see you guys next month. Have a great day. Thank you.